Welcome to Faith Over Fear, the Christian Pregnancy and Birth podcast. I'm Natalie Portman, a wife, mama, birth doula, and childbirth educator. And I believe God has a better way for us to experience birth, one without fear, striving, or self-glorification. If you're ready to stop feeling overwhelmed and instead trust the Lord more deeply in pregnancy, birth, and motherhood, you're in the right place. Here you'll find inspiring birth stories, biblical encouragement, and practical wisdom to help you walk in faith over fear during this beautiful and challenging season. Now let's get started. Welcome back to Faith Over Fear, the Christian Pregnancy and Birth podcast. Today I am so excited to welcome Emily Whalen, a sweet mama, content creator, and someone I had the honor of serving as her doula. You might know her from Instagram as Nurtured Little Nest, where she shares about slow living, motherhood, and how Jesus truly transforms our minds and hearts. Her story is powerful and full of grace, from navigating mental health diagnoses to walking through pregnancy, birth, and postpartum with faith and intention. Emily, thank you so much for being here and being willing to share your heart with us today.
Hi, and thank you for having me.
Well, let's start from the beginning. What was your journey like to becoming pregnant?
Well, this is probably a longer than expected story, but I guess I'll start with dating and getting married to my husband because that's how it goes. So we got engaged when I was 19 and we got married when I was 20 in the year 2019, right before COVID. So it worked out. But shortly after we got married, my husband went off to basic training for the Army and was gone pretty much for the entirety of the major shutdowns and everything. So we had pretty much no contact because if you know anything about basic training or the Army, you send letters to each other pretty much. And that's it. So it was very interesting. And during that time, I started having a lot of mental health symptoms. To make a very long story short, I ended up getting diagnosed with OCD and bipolar disorder, which, looking at my family, it's not surprising. It's one of those things that you don't think about until it's happening to you. So I was just going off the rails. I was drinking a lot. I didn't have any accountability. My husband wasn't home. And it was just a really hard time. And when he came home, he had had a hard time. I had had a hard time, and we together were having a hard time. So we moved in with my in-laws for a while. I think we lived with them for a year and a half. And we've both been to therapy. I was taking some medication that was really working. And we decided to move out. We got an apartment. And shortly after that, I got pregnant. And it's really funny because I did not think I could. I was on medicine that I shouldn't have been able to. I had taken birth control for years and years and years. And I was like, oh, surely I'm going to have a problem getting pregnant, right? And it was funny because I was being really emotional about something. And my husband was like, what if you're pregnant? I was like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not pregnant. And then I went to the store and a Taylor Swift song made me cry randomly in Target. And I was like, ooh, maybe I should buy a test. So I did. And sure enough, there was no question I was pregnant. And I called my husband, who was at work. He's a law enforcement officer. He was standing in the jail. He had just arrested somebody and he picked up the phone and I was sobbing. I couldn't get any words out. And he goes, okay, either the dog died or you're pregnant. And I was like, the dog didn't die. And he was like, there's the whole thing. It was awesome.
I love that story so much. That is hilarious, Emily.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Wow.
All of his cop friends were with him. They were all cheering. It was great.
Oh, so sweet. That is incredible. I know. Isn't it so surprising when you do get pregnant, when you expect that it's going to take a while, which I think that is a healthy mindset to have because most women don't get pregnant right out the gate. And so incredible. That was the Lord's story for you guys. I love that.
Huh.
So then how was your pregnancy overall? How did you prepare for that emotionally, spiritually, and practically?
So I found out I was pregnant and I'm a very Have you heard of like the type A, type B, type C people? I'm very type C, where I'm very like particular about a lot of things, and there's certain things I just don't care about as much. So when I found out I was pregnant, I was like, oh, I have to do everything perfect, right? Like it's gonna have to be perfect. So I found like the best OBGYN I could find, and I was reading all these books and doing all these things. And really, I think I was asking the wrong questions because I was more worried about my baby, right? Obviously, you're so worried about what's going on. I had been taking medication I had to get off of, which so uncomfy. I did not love that. So I was extremely nauseous from that, but also from pregnancy. And my husband and I joke that I just like threw up for, I feel like 9 months. I just kept throwing up. And I know so many people are probably like, yeah, because it's so common. But yeah, I just really was focused on what I could do for my baby and not what I could do for me. And it's not that I regret that, but I feel like I could have had an easier time if I had looked into things like, okay, how can I take care of myself right now? So looking back, if I could go back, I'd be like, please eat something besides Chick-fil-A. Because I just know that was probably part of what was making me sick is I was not eating like good food. I wasn't eating enough protein, probably. It was interesting. I loved being pregnant. I loved feeling my baby. I loved like that aspect of it. And then I did not love being really ill all the time. Also, I did not love the end, which everyone says that, right? But I got really, really swollen, and it was very difficult for me to just like live every day. I was working at 1122 at the time, and I was walking around on Sundays, and like the sweet old ladies and stuff were like, are you okay? I was like, no, I'm not. I'm really pregnant. But yeah, I would go back and be like, please, like, eat a steak or something, you know?
I know it is incredible how, especially like that first trimester, like you have to give yourself a lot of grace when you're that sick to just eat whatever you can physically tolerate. But then when you do start feeling a little more normal, to just prioritize that, the things that you know you need to eat. I always recommend this incredible book called Real Food for Pregnancy by Lily Nichols. It is so good. I'll put that book in the show notes, but that one's an incredible read because it does talk about like just the changes in your body's needs when you're pregnant. And what's interesting too is we're told things like never eat sushi and like certain weird pregnancy things that actually aren't true. If you're getting sushi from a reputable place, that's actually really good for your body because raw fish has more selenium in it. And I craved poke bowls and raw sushi like no one's business when I was pregnant. And so I think trying to listen to your body a little bit more and instead of just giving it random things, being more intentional, but also not being so hard on yourself. So don't be so hard on yourself, Emily, because, you know, you were doing the best you could, especially that first time when it's just a whirlwind. It can really be such a whirlwind that first time, especially.
It definitely was. And it's funny because I eat so different now that I'm not pregnant. I haven't been to a fast food restaurant in probably since I'm pregnant. My son's almost 2. So it's just one of those things where you're like, oh, God.
Yes, I know. I changed my diet big time when I was pregnant with Daniel. I had really bad eczema on my hands. It was kind of other places, but really bad on my hands to the point where I would be up at night scratching the skin on my hands. And it would always be worse at night when you're like warmer and so. I don't know. It was weird. But I was looking more into how maybe diet could be affecting that because you obviously can't take like steroids and stuff like that, like creams and stuff that I would have normally probably turned to. So I eliminated gluten, dairy, and eggs, just like cold turkey, just eliminated it. And it straight up healed completely my eczema and had so many other benefits. Like my joints were feeling better. I swelled way less that pregnancy. And so, like, just comparing the 2 pregnancies, where the first one, I wasn't eating horribly, but I also wasn't eating great, to, like, eating much cleaner that second pregnancy, it did make a huge difference. But, again, give yourself grace on that and And I think it's one of those things where, because it is such a big life shift to change your diet, you kind of have to slowly make shifts. Very few people can just do what I did, where I was like, oh, cold turkey, like one day I'm just not eating those things anymore. But most of us need to have like that slow change so that it's more sustainable and we can, make just lasting changes for our health.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Now that I'm on this side of it, that's what I had to do. It started when I was giving my son solids for the first time, mostly because I'm giving him like avocados and chicken and beef and all these things. And I was sitting there eating a Reese's peanut butter cup, and he reached out for it. And I was like, oh, I'm not feeding you that. Like, you're not eating that. And in my mind, I just had like the Holy Spirit say, if you wouldn't feed your kid that, then why are you eating it? And I was like, oh, I better stop.
Yes, it's so true.
It sent me just like down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, yeah, because you look at what you're feeding your child and you're like, if I put in this much intention in what I'm feeding them, I also need to be intentional about what I'm feeding myself, because our body is a temple. And I think it definitely can become idolatry if we take it way too far and we have all these restrictions and it becomes this like self-worship. But I think, there is a very healthy, God-honoring way to approach every aspect of your life, and especially something like the way that you're literally nourishing your body every single day, or not nourishing your body every single day.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. My husband's doing it now. His eczema's gone also. So it's really great. I'm looking forward to the next pregnancy to be like eating better and just compare the difference, like you said.
Oh, it's going to be like a huge difference. I can tell you that. Mm-hmm. So how else did you kind of prepare for that pregnancy emotionally and kind of more practically?
Emotionally, I just talked to women who had been pregnant. I talked to family members, which everyone's family is different. Mine weren't so positive, but members of the church and people just around me, moms already who had young kids, moms whose kids were grown, and just kind of like, what would you do different? Or what did you do that you liked? And again, I read a ton of books, a lot of books. Not all of them were helpful, but one of them that I read.
Was it Ina May's Guide?
Yes, that's the one it is.
Yes,
it is.
That one was a complete game changer for me. I will also put that in the show notes. That one is what convinced me to even attempt an unmedicated birth.
Me too.
Yes, because it totally reframed for me the intensity of labor and birth. And I had never heard that before, really. It kind of resolved at the beginning of my pregnancy with my first, with Ellie. Like, oh, I'm definitely going to get an epidural. Like, yeah, there's no medal for going unmedicated. And I'm not saying you get a medal for going unmedicated, but I just didn't see any sort of value with even attempting that. And so that's so crazy that was the book that changed your mind too. Because yeah, it's really powerful. The things that we tell ourselves, that mindset. And I think that book is really great at helping prepare your mindset.
Mm-hmm. Your mindset dictates everything. I always say, my sister and my husband, they get so annoyed with me, but it's true. I say, don't say anything out loud that you don't want to be true, because anything you say, your brain hears it. Anything you tell yourself, your brain hears it. And whether you consciously believe it or not, subconsciously it's in there. So if you believe, oh, I'm going to get an epidural, I'm going to be in pain, I'm going to have all these negative things, that's probably what's going to happen. And my husband, I love him so much. And I love how right he is about most things. He really is. He's right about most things. I just usually don't like the way he says it, but he really is so smart and so right. But he was like, Emily, I think you're going to need an epidural. Like, why would you do that? I've seen people give birth. He used to be an ER tech at Shands. He's like, I've seen people give birth. Why would you try it without it? And I was like, this sounds like a challenge now. So now I have to do it. Really, the benefits, once you understand them, are kind of amazing, because if you look into the epidural and what it does and the things you need after that, like Pitocin, I didn't have any of those things. And immediately after my baby was born, like I had all feeling everywhere. Yes, I felt all of the negative, but I also felt all of the positive. Nothing in my experience was blocked because of a pharmaceutical. I also have friends who have really bad back pain still from their epidural that has never gone away. And honestly, I was more afraid of that and the needle that they put in you than any pain I was going to face, because I've always had a thing about needles, and that was like the nail in the coffin for me. Like, you're not coming near me with that thing.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we can oversimplify certain interventions. And I feel like the epidural can certainly have its time and its place. I have seen a handful of times where I feel like mom was having a really intense, long, drawn out labor, and that epidural was able to kind of preserve her strength to get her to the finish line and have a vaginal delivery that she really wanted. But I also can see how if we resolve without really investigating the benefits and the risks of certain interventions, and epidural is certainly an intervention, then we can just fall into a cycle or like a cascade of interventions is what we call it in the birth world, where one intervention leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. And many of the times an epidural can be like that first domino that falls. And again, this is not to say that every single time that happens. It's weighing the risks and the benefits and just having that knowledge base to have another option. The other thing that's really interesting is depending on how quickly you go into labor and have your baby, sometimes you don't have time for an epidural. And it's very wise to know how you might cope if you don't even get the opportunity to get an epidural. Because I think that's the other thing you can fall into is thinking, oh, well, I'm getting an epidural, so I don't need to learn how to cope with early labor or anything like that. Well, there's going to be some time where you will be experiencing unmedicated contractions. Unless you have a planned C-section, there's a good chance that you will experience labor contractions, even if the plan is to get an epidural. So yeah, I agree with that. So let's dive into your birth story. How far along were you when you started? And then just go through as much detail as you want of that story.
Yeah. So I was having like random contractions for a week, and I was sitting at 4 centimeters dilated the whole time. It was so unpleasant. I kept joking. I was like, he's going to fall out. Like, he's just so low. And there was just pressure, but I just had to live my life that way for a week. And I was like, what are we doing? So the night that I went into labor, Josh was sitting there on the phone with his sergeant. He was like, Emily, am I taking off work tonight or what? Like, what's going on? I was like, I don't know. Maybe. Couldn't tell you. So I just started walking my dog around the block. And my dog is a golden retriever, and he is a very lazy, low energy golden retriever. So once we did like one lap, he was like, what are we doing? Like, come on, Boone. I'm trying to walk this baby out. Okay. Like dragging him down the sidewalk. So finally we get back, and I'm like, this isn't going to happen. I'm texting you, and you're like, just go relax. Just go sit down and see what happens. Like, just give it time. So I'm sitting there, and I'm like trying to read a book, and I can't focus on anything. And I'm having contractions. And Josh is asking me again, like, am I going to work? Like, his sergeant gave him delay and time to, it was so stressful for me because I felt so bad for everyone. I was like, I don't know. But finally I was like, oh wait, I think I'm having contractions, like for real. And to me, I've always had really bad periods. So I was like, is this just like a cramp? What is this? I don't know, because my cramps have always been bad. So I'm just laying there, and you were telling me to eat things. You're like, go eat something just in case. Eat some food, because once you get to the hospital, they're not going to let you eat. So Josh ordered a pizza for me, and I ate quite a bit of it. And my contractions started picking up, and I'm like trying to ignore it because I'm like, no, surely it's not happening tonight. I don't want to get my hopes up, right? And finally, I texted you, and I was like, yeah, they're however many minutes apart. And you're like, okay, well, I'll come over, and like the goal will be to stay at home for as long as possible. And I remember throwing up right when you got to my house. All the pizza I had just eaten just came back up. And I was so frustrated, but you're like, no, that's good. It means like things are moving. And I was like, okay, whatever you say. But yeah, we went to the hospital after that. And I remember the car ride. Josh was just like, are you okay? Are you okay? The whole time I was like, can you just drive? Can you just go? I'm fine. And it was about midnight. So we get there and I did not like the check-in because I had to be by myself. It was the worst part. So I was just trying to be calm. My whole goal was to just be calm the whole time. I just wanted to be like present and peaceful and not get stressed because I knew once I got like amped up, it'd be really hard for me to bring it down. So they're like asking me all these questions, and I'm like, okay, sure. Like, here's what I can remember right now. I'm having a contraction, so I hope I'm telling you the right thing. I remember sitting in the room, and I was really chill because I was like purposefully being chill. And she's like, I don't know. I don't think you're going into labor right now. Like, you're too calm. And I was like, okay. And then she's like, we'll check you and see what happens. And I was like, okay. Hope I don't have to go back home. How embarrassing would that be? But she checked me, and I was at 6 centimeters. And she was like, wow, you were so calm. You did not seem like you were at 6 centimeters. I was like, I'm trying really hard. So they got me all checked in, changed. I like barely remember it at that point because I was so focused on just trying to get into the room and just like focus. So finally we get there and we had some sweet nurses. I remember this one that was blonde and she was really just like listening to the things I wanted and like being calm. And I also remember being annoyed about having to be in a hospital. For my next child, we'll probably give birth in a birth center or at home or something. But for the first one, since Josh had worked in a hospital and had seen things, he was like, I just really want you to be there in case something goes wrong. Fair enough. So I remember being annoyed about that because they're strapping things to me and like sticking an IV in me and all this stuff. And I'm like, this is not helping. But once that was going and I was really getting into labor, I remember being so nauseous. And you were waving essential oils in my face for me, which was so good. And I tell everyone about that. I'm like, get somebody to do that because it was very helpful. And I remember Josh putting, or maybe you put on my worship playlist, somebody did. And like the height of my contractions, that song by Chris Tomlin, Holy Forever, came on. I cannot listen to that song in church because I just like weep. Just remembering the birth because I was getting to a point where I was getting tired and that song came on and I just was like, all right, everything's going to be okay. Like God is with me. And I was breathing and you kept telling me to unclench my jaw, which is so funny because I have really bad TMJ and clench my jaw all the time. But I was like, okay, yep, I'm going to unclench my jaw. I'm going to just be relaxed. And I remember having contractions and I think I said one time, oh, that was a good one. And one of the nurses looked at me. She was like, girl, because I had no pain medicine. I had nothing at that point. And then I remember we got to the pushing and I just felt like, okay, like now it's time, but I also don't know if I feel ready. Like I was kind of just like in this limbo, but the nurses and everybody was saying it was time. So I was like, okay, it's time. What do I know? Right. But looking back, I should have been more in tune with what my body was telling me because my son was sunny side up. He was not the right way, even though in his last ultrasound, he was in the perfect position. For some reason, he flipped on the way down. And I remember you telling me that I would feel a lot of back pain if that had happened. So I was not feeling a lot of back pain, surprisingly. And so I did not think that that was what was going on. But I do remember feeling like he wasn't moving, like he wasn't going anywhere. And I was pushing and pushing and I was like, he's not going anywhere. And they had tried to check me several times and I had declined it. And I think I told you he's not moving. And you were like, all right, let's get you checked because that's a big deal. So they checked him and he was sunny side up. And I remember the doctor looking at me and saying, so you can push for a few more minutes and then we can do a C-section. And I remember you were like, no. And praise God, because I was just like, what? No, I don't want to do a C-section. Like what are you talking about? And I remember you asking her, can you flip him? And she was like, well, I can try, but you're going to feel the whole thing. And I was like, I don't care. Just do it. So she did. She just stuck her hand in there and gave him a little spin. And 20 minutes later, I pushed out and I was beautiful little boy who just needed some help with directions on the way out.
I know those little stinkers. I mean, they flip in labor, which is great if your baby is sunny side up to begin, or like OP, and then they can rotate into a more favorable position. But it's not impossible to push out a baby if they're sunny side up. I actually have had clients that literally deliver the baby the opposite way they're supposed to be. It's more challenging because they're basically trying to navigate the pelvis backwards. And so it's more work for mama and baby. But yeah, it's one of those things where at that point I had seen other providers flip a baby before, like in that exact situation, like we're pushing, they reach their hand inside and they flip the baby. And so I was like, hey, can you do that? Can you try? Because what else do we have to lose besides more time of you pushing and potentially a cesarean delivery, which we all didn't want for you. So thank God that provider was willing to do that, was successful in doing that, because yeah, it was like as soon as that happened, he was right there.
It really is, because I remember being like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I cannot keep going. I was so tired. And I did end up on my back somehow, which I had intended not to, but I think it was really just because I was so tired that I couldn't like keep standing anymore, like upwards. And I was watching videos that you took in preparation to talk about it. And in the video, I go, oh, I'm ready for a nap.
And I actually do have clients that nap in between pushing. They'll literally just doze off in between pushes and then wake up and start pushing and then go right back to sleep. That's a thing too.
I wish I could have done that.
I know.
That sounds delightful.
I know. But what was it like when he was actually born? Do you remember that feeling of him actually being born?
I do. And I remember I said some swear words. And I looked at you and I was like, Natalie, I'm so sorry.
I was like, girl, it's okay. It's all good. It is intense.
It was so intense. And like the feeling of him actually being placed on my chest is like, it's indescribable how much of a immediate connection that I just instantly had with him. And like, I've worked in childcare and in preschools, and I was a nanny for a long time. So like, I know a lot about kids. And they always say when it's your own, it's different. It really is, because the minute he came out, I was like, I would do anything for you. Literally anything. And what did he do? He just breathed like once. And I was like, yep. I'm going to just change everything about my life for you. And I feel like God really does that on purpose, because I did not have a clear understanding of his love for me until I had my own child. It used to baffle me. Like, God sent his son. Jesus was looking at me on the cross and was delighted in that he was saving me. How? Right? Like, how is that possible? And now that I have a child and God's supernatural love is coming through me to my child, I can understand more of what that's like, because I cannot consider a situation where I wouldn't do anything for him, you know? So I think it's just like something women uniquely get access to, because my husband absolutely has that connection, but he did not push him out, right? He doesn't have the same experience nursing a baby for however long, and, you know, like labor and just all of the things that are really God's design, because that is such a intense time and it's so much effort, and being able to experience it and feel all the things through it and really focus on like what God teaches you in that is really, really unique. And I think that's a lot of how God sanctifies us, is through birth and becoming a mother, because I did not know how selfish I was until I became a mom. And just like everything in life, your mindset about it is 100% what your reality is going to be. So when I was freshly postpartum, I was like, nothing about me is going to change. I am not going to let motherhood be my identity. Like all these things that the world tells you, right? So I was just like, I'm going to be myself. I'm going to keep my job. I'm going to do all the things I like to do, and I'll have a baby, right? Delusion. About 3 months into my job and having a newborn and taking him with me, which was a huge blessing. But 3 months into it, I was like, I can't do this. This is not for me. I don't need a job. This is my job now. And I remember talking to my husband about it, and he was like, well, yeah, just stay home. I was like, wait, what? Like I was expecting pushback, He was like, no, he is your life now. That's totally fine. If that's what you want to do, then you should do it. So we kind of took not a huge financial hit. It's not like I was making a lot, but we took that and I started staying home, and I was home all day with him. And it's one of those things where your identity, like you can go a little nuts if you don't find something to do. So I had to really learn how to give myself, like when I don't want to and not on my schedule, how to pour out into this child who needs me. And he was not a good sleeper. So we were very tired a lot. He would just wake up all the time looking for me, which is not a bad thing. We just wouldn't sleep longer than like 3 hours. So it was not ideal. And I started making shifts because I was getting burnt out, and I was feeling like, why do I not like this? Right? Like, why am I feeling stuck? Why don't I enjoy this? This is my child. I get one time being his mom, and I'm not like, I would have FOMO almost about my own life because I was missing out because I was miserable. And I was miserable because I was resisting the change. I was resisting letting God sanctify me through motherhood. And once I realized that my life is going to look different, and that is okay. And that's the point. And directly how you feel about it is based on your mindset, and how much joy you experience is based on what you're willing to take in, right? Like there's joyful things around you every day, everywhere. Do you take them in, right? So I am watching my son take his first steps, and I'm watching him eat food and learn words. And I taught him baby sign language, and type A situation was very into it. So he knows a lot. And so I'm talking to him in sign language, and I'm watching him, his little brain just going. Like those are all really joyful moments. And for me, half the time they were being shadowed by, oh, there's dishes in my sink, or, oh, the dog tracked dirt all over my house and I'm stepping on it, right? Like just the very specific things that bother you. And so having to learn that letting go is okay, and that perfection is not the goal, even though that's always what I've strived for my whole life was perfection. Perfection is literally never going to happen. Jesus is the only one that could do that. And just like choosing to be present in the one thing I'm doing and not thinking about all the others, which is so hard. It's way easier to say that than it is to do it. But it's really been helpful. I feel like in the last year, it's helpful that I don't have postpartum hormones raging anymore, but also it's helpful that I've made the intentional shift to tell myself positive things. I tell myself positive things about everything, even when it's annoying. Like today, for example, my neighbor's backyard has a situation happening over there that we are unaware of, but there is a horde of flies that come over to our house from his side. I have no idea what's going on over there. His backyard looks like a jungle. He's very old. Maybe something has deceased back there. I don't know, but this happens in this house every springtime. I don't know why. And it's only like our little section. Anyway, so there's flies flying into my house, which I cannot stand. My dog and my son have tracked like an actual sandbox across my floor. And then like the dishes were piled up, and we're going on a trip tomorrow. So I'm like packing, and things are everywhere. And I just had this like impending sense of like, I think I'm going to lose my mind. Right. And I just took a minute, and I sat down with my son, and I looked at him and I said, Mommy is having a very hard time being calm right now. I was like, and we do this thing where I'm like, will you help me take deep breaths. He thinks it's hilarious. Really, I actually mean it. So he's like, we do this big arm motion and we breathe a lot. And then I usually end up tickling him or something to get out of it. And the whole time I'm usually praying and asking for patience or maybe crying or something, because it can be really hard. And I feel like when I talk to people about how I've changed my mindset, like that doesn't mean it's perfect. And that doesn't mean I do it right every time. But in those moments that feel really, really hard, it's about what you do then. So do you tell yourself, yeah, this is going to ruin my whole day. I am just going to be so annoyed all day because of this situation. And like, well, just try again tomorrow. Or are you going to tell yourself, like today I said, I'm going to vacuum the floor and I'm going to get the fly swatter and then we're going to color and play a game and it's going to be great. Like you just tackle the things one by one and move on, because otherwise you just dwell and it's such a downer. So all of that to say, I think that has been the most healing part for me about being a mom is just letting life happen,
Yeah, trying not to make it perfect, because you're right. This side of heaven, we will not experience perfection. It's not until Jesus comes and the new heavens and the new earth is established that we will experience that perfection we long for. But here, especially as a world that is just so micro and macro level, just infiltrated by sin and brokenness, and that includes giving birth, and that includes being a mom to our sinful children. Like we cannot be perfect right now. And when we expect that of ourselves, it sets us off mentally to just stew in that. And, or at least I'll speak for myself for that. I know that I can just stew in my imperfections and it just makes me want to give up. But I think it's so healthy to find new ways, like you're describing, to just refocus, to go to the Lord, to seek Him when you are just completely at your wit's end. And kids will bring you there every day. There is not a day that goes by with my kids where I don't get to a point where I'm like, Lord, please help me, because I cannot have this argument again about the underwear you're wearing or whatever. Every day it's a battle. And but that's what's so beautiful about this journey that I've seen from so many other women, is that it is a very sanctifying season because it's so difficult. Because Scripture says the Lord is near to the brokenhearted. And not to say that motherhood makes us brokenhearted, but we are constantly dealing with ourselves, like just a rawness of ourselves and the rawness of our children and their emotions and their sin and just their selfishness. We face it every single day. And so I love that you shared that. And even shared that way of calming down. I needed to give that one a try. But that's beautiful. Is that also how you got started with doing Nurtured Little Nest? Give me some insight into how that formed.
Yeah. So I actually started my page around the time my son was 6 months old. And I posted for a year with nothing. I think I had like 80 followers the whole time. And some of them were like robots, And so I started it with like a way to document what I was learning, because you consume so much on your phone all the time. And I would get ideas. I was like, somebody around the world would benefit from hearing that. And so I would just make it into a little reel or whatever. And I knew that maybe nothing would ever happen, right? Like it's just for me. And I think people that set out to like be viral, like be famous or whatever, I think that's the wrong attitude about it, because I've heard a couple of videos do well. Like I've had one hit in the millions or something, but my life didn't change. You know what I mean? Like I'm still living my life. It doesn't really look different. It's just been a way to build a community with other moms who are like-minded to me. So I have some moms that also share on their own pages. I have some that don't share anything, but group chats have happened. We've had discussions. I've been able to help people with things I've learned. I've had people give me advice. it's just been something that has really blessed me in a way that I wasn't fully expecting. And I started it kind of hoping that's what would happen. And it's just been so rewarding to share things that I learned. I've always been somebody who likes to teach things, and I thought I was going to be a teacher, and then hated school. So I was like, why would I go back to school? You know? So it's been really cool just to teach people how, like, things that I've learned about motherhood, about anything. And in fact, I got a text from my husband last night. One of his coworkers recognized him from one of my reels. He said, my wife just sent me this. Is that you? He was like, I recognized you. And Josh was like, yeah, that's my wife's Instagram. And he was like, well, tell her she made a great reel that made my wife feel encouraged about her birth because she's giving birth in June. And I was just like, that's the whole point. That's why I started it, because I want to encourage and inspire other women to combat the lies that the world tells us. Because the world tells us that motherhood is awful, it's a trap, that you're a victim, that you should resent your spouse, that your kids are terrible, just all these negative things that really, when you tune that out, are not true. They're just not true. And you can convince yourself of anything. So when you let all the negative pour in, of course, you feel like you don't like your spouse because other people don't, and they're telling you about it, right? So just like who you hang out with, you become. What you consume on social media, you become. And I just felt like I needed to add something positive to the line of fire that you get every time you open your phone.
Yes, that is so good, Emily. And it's so true. I think there is an aspect of self-fulfilling prophecies. And you're right. The power of the tongue, it literally can manifest reality. And the same with even just really negative thoughts. Because like if you think about it, when you have a negative thought, like one that I still struggle with, but one that I struggle with less is like this mentality of I'm such a bad mom, or like something to that kind of effect. And if you entertain that and ruminate on that, it becomes your reality. And instead, you can be transformed by the renewing of your mind, and you can take the word of God and you can say something like, I'm not perfect, but God doesn't require perfection of me. He would not have given me these children if he had not called and equipped me to be this child's mom. And just speaking that truth and having community to speak into you and encourage you through the tough times. Because even being a couple years postpartum, it's hard to remember all that really took place during that time. And so when you're walking through a very particular season with another mom who is literally in the trenches in that exact same time as you, there is so much encouragement in that, because we forget a lot. We just can't remember how hard it was, certain aspects of our parenting and motherhood journey. So I love that you are that for so many mamas. That's incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, I just was one day really led to just start posting. And I was like, you know what? I don't even care if this is embarrassing. I just have stuff to say and nobody to say it to. So I was going to post it.
Well, I love it. I'm so glad you did, and that you just listened to what the Lord was whispering to you and just encouraged you in that. So if someone wants to connect with you, is following you on Instagram the best way to do it?
Yeah, I have Instagram, I have TikTok, and I'm slowly building a YouTube. It feels like a lot of pressure, but I have one. So
Awesome.
you can follow me there too. It's all the same username.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and sharing a little bit more about what you've been up to. I loved attending your birth. It was incredible and just so powerful. And I also still cry at that song, Holy Forever. It was such a powerful song. Oh my goodness.
It really is.
So good. Well, thank you again. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
That's it for today on Faith Over Fear, the Christian Pregnancy and Birth podcast. I hope today's conversation encouraged your heart and equipped you to trust God more deeply in your pregnancy, birth, and motherhood journey. Hey, before you go, I want to gift you with a freebie. I've compiled some of my most popular resources inside the Christian Mama Birth Prep Library. It includes practical birth prep handouts, such as the labor positions cheat sheet, birth preferences checklist, and provider questions guide. You'll also get exclusive discounts and even a worship labor playlist to bring God's peace into your birth space. To get instant access, simply visit faithoverfearbirth.com or click the link in the episode show notes to sign up. You'll receive immediate access to these valuable resources created just for you. If today's episode blessed you, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with some other mamas who could use this encouragement. Your support helps more women find this podcast and embrace faith-filled birth and motherhood. Let's keep choosing faith over fear. Bye-bye for now.